Let's jump into it. Let's do it. My name is Michael Pettersson. I'm a member of the ACT Legislative Assembly. Today, the Australian Capital Territory has legalised the possession of small amounts of cannabis for personal use. This is a result of a bill that I moved in September of 2018. It's now January of 2020, so changing the law isn't a quick or speedy thing. So it's been a bit over a year going through this process of campaigning for a law change, but here we are, and cannabis is legal in the ACT. From now, it is legal to possess 50 grams of cannabis. It is illegal for a household to grow 4 plants, each individual 2. We've introduced something called the new wet limit, which means whilst you're harvesting your cannabis, you can have 150 grams of harvest. We have also introduced some new laws. It's now illegal to smoke in public. That is a new specific offence, and it's illegal to smoke in the presence of children. Let's be very clear, the Australian Capital Territory can't change Commonwealth laws. And under Commonwealth law, there is an offence for cannabis possession. We're aware of that, we know about that, that's not a surprise. What we're saying is you need to actually think about what the law is. The law is not just the offences, it's also the defences to those charges. We know that there's a Commonwealth cannabis possession offence. What we're saying is that we've empowered a defence to that charge. This is the central thing that people can't get their head around, and it's I think the most important thing for people to understand. States and territories have always had different laws to the Commonwealth when it comes to drug laws, particularly cannabis. ACT has always had very forward-thinking drug policies. What we have done in the ACT is we've removed the ACT offence. We've also crafted this legislation to enact a defence that's written into Commonwealth law that says if your use is excused or justified by the state or territory, that provides a complete defence to the Commonwealth possession charge. With this law change, we voted for a review of this legislation in a couple of years' time. I look forward to seeing what the studies, the research, and the actual on-the-ground effect of this legislation is. Where this goes to in the future, that's a bit more complicated. The Australian Capital Territory is somewhat limited in the laws we can change. There is scope for us to move within Commonwealth law, which is what we've taken advantage of with cannabis. One of the key things to talk about, though, is these law changes only address the possession. They don't really address the supply side. Arguably, someone can now grow their own supply, but that's not a particularly sustainable choice for a lot of people. Not everyone's a gardener. So looking forward, I think dealing with supply is an important public policy question. What that looks like, I'm not sure. There are a bunch of different models, and I'm not sure what works for the ACT and what scope there is under Commonwealth law to implement them. The big problem we face is that there is scope for the ACT to create our own laws when it comes to the possession side. The Commonwealth laws, which all states and territories have to operate within, leaves no flexibility to deal with the supply side. So to really get like a Colorado or Canada model, you really need some changes at the federal level, but there is scope potentially within the current Commonwealth laws to maybe look at something like cannabis clubs, but even those are still a bit questionable because the fundamental problem you face is that the Commonwealth has very strict and they kick in at very low thresholds drug trafficking laws and drug supply laws, and put simply, there's no way to get around those laws. They exist, and so anyone supplying or trafficking cannabis will face Commonwealth drug charge. The other thing that needs to be said, the person that brings forward a prosecution is someone called the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, they have a responsibility not to prosecute someone if they don't have reasonable grounds to think that they're going to win. We don't believe the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions will bring forward prosecutions because of the existence of this defence, and they've previously said they wouldn't. It's not actually a radical idea in the ACT. In the ACT, 54% of Canberrans support the legalisation of cannabis, with only 27% opposed. So in the ACT, this isn't actually a crazy idea. This is actually popular public policy. I'm just the guy that brought it forward. We need to be very clear, and this is where misinformation spread in the legalised movement is problematic. There is actually not a majority of Australians that support the legalisation of cannabis. Across Australia, you're actually more likely to see more opposition to legalisation than support for it. And I base that on statistically relevant and accurate polling done by independent organisations Self-selecting online polls are not representative, they're not accurate, and you should never base anything off them. Across Australia, I saw a poll from Roy Morgan, I think, they put it at 49% opposed, 42% in support. There's different polls that kind of have different numbers, but they all kind of fall roughly around there. So the ACT is the most progressive jurisdiction. We do have that support for legalisation here. I want to be very careful in not conflating medicinal marijuana and recreational cannabis, because I think it does a disservice to both to conflate the two. Medicinal marijuana is highly regulated. You know exactly what you're taking, you know the chemical composition of what you're taking. Recreational cannabis grown at home, you're not going to know the chemical composition of that plant. So there is a danger in someone trying to self-medicate with recreational cannabis. That's not to say people aren't going to do it, because there are big holes in the Commonwealth medicinal marijuana scheme. That's why some people want to resort to recreational cannabis. So I'm one of the 1 in 3 Australians that have used cannabis in my lifetime. I'm not one of the 10% of Australians that have used cannabis in the past year. I've probably used cannabis a handful of times in my lifetime. I didn't have any adverse effects from my usage, but some people do. Some people also, however, do derive great benefit from their cannabis use. Some people use it as medicine, some people use it recreationally, but everyone should be aware of the consequences of their cannabis use. These law changes in the ACT aren't to encourage people to use cannabis, they're to recognise that people do use cannabis. The best way to help me out is probably give me a like on social media. There's an election in the ACT at the end of this year, which I'm running for re-election. So for any of you Canberra followers, any help and support would be much appreciated.